All right. So after some technical difficulty, here we are. First of all, good morning. Cheers to you. I hope you had a good Thanksgiving. Mine was filled with just family, love, and joy, and I cannot be any more thankful. So, get to the topic: taking care, or sorry, taking control of your life, right? And what does that mean? Well, I am not talking about, you know, a planner and this is how I'm gonna do my life and my day and how it's all gonna work from a worldly perspective. I don't mean that. What I do mean is internal, like you internal, because this internal changes everything outside of you. And that may strike a chord with some people. Some people are like, what is this guy talking about? And that's okay. So that's why we're here. My goal is to share my life experiences with you and hopefully bits and pieces that resonate with you and your soul, your higher self, your spirit, whatever you want to call it, speaks to you in that regard. And you can take that with you and start to see life from a different perspective, right? And so the first place you got to start with is, who are you, right? Like a lot of us, we take so much time trying to figure things out, Google it, chat GPT it, look it up, uh, ask questions to other people. And a lot of us don't spend the time to actually look inside to figure ourselves out. And once you get to that point, you kind of ask yourself, well, how on earth have I been doing this for so long? And I haven't even looked internal because a lot of us, I was having a conversation with someone and they're talking about God. And before I say the word God, I'm not talking about religion. I'm talking about spirituality. And the reason I say that is there are a lot of misinterpretations of religion, and religion as a whole is very man-made. So I'm not attacking anybody. I'm not attacking anyone's religion. I believe, if your belief system is connected to a loving frequency, then we're all talking about the same God. Okay. Personal, I I grew up on Christ consciousness, and that story started with me just going to church by myself as a family member, but with friends down the road. Then I got to a point of asking a lot of questions about how things are, how they got there, things that didn't make any sense to me, and no one had any answers for me. So I then became atheist, moved from Colorado down to Texas. When I came to Texas, I was, escaping a relationship because I wasn't ready for it, for the commitment of it, I say it that way. And then I got to this beautiful place out here in Texas. It was just, massive house, cars, women, other things that a young adult male white want after college. And things were going so well. Like I had to get a second job. I had to figure out how to pay for a mortgage. We were having our own oil and gas company with my dad, and we were losing everything. And it was just this everything from different angles coming at me, right? And I'm a fixer. Okay, I like to help fix things, and I was looking at all the things I could do for it, and nothing was working. So it got to a point where family things were happening, and I just got just broken down. Like I was like, well, I could sit here and ask God for help, and so I did. So I said, you know what? Well, worst case scenario, nothing happens. I'm in the same spot, but I can at least try this whole thing and see if it works. So that's what I did. And the next day, I get invited to church, by an acquaintance. I'm like, that's getting kind of weird. And by this time, I figured out that everything in life is connected, right? And then once I figured that part out, I also understood that we have a huge connection with the things in our life. Okay. And if you put those things together and you fast forward to, all right, well, if I've accepted this Christ consciousness now and everything in my life is connected, that means that I have a huge impact on my life. Right? Does that make sense? So when people sit here and they get into adulthood and they get a job and do other things that adults are supposed to do, which I'm not saying don't have a job. I am saying that there's a way to be, as Christ talked about, in the world, but not of the world. And when I first read that, that didn't make a lot of sense to me. But now it makes all the sense to me. So let's think about the rules of the world. As you probably have seen, a lot of the rules of the world are very much they change, right? It depends on who's in control, what party's in control, what monetary systems in control, all that stuff. Those rules change over time. The thing with consciousness in the universe is things are always the way that they are, right? And a lot of us get really angry at people that are not so good people, I'll say it that way, and they get great things, and you're like, well, why would a loving God allow this person to do this or have this? Well, number one, it's not we can't have our free will taken from us. That's what makes us who we are as a soul living in this physical reality. And so the intention that you have, whether it be good or bad, it still works with how the universe works. Okay. Hope that makes sense. So if you don't live your life with intention, then things are just going to randomly happen to you. And if you have no focus on what it is that you are bringing into your life, you're probably going to have a lot of anxiety and you're probably going to have a lot of depression, anger, and guilt because you don't take control of you. And so, if you think about it from a basic perspective, our human body is animalistic in nature. And being as though we're inside this animalistic mind, there are animalistic features, right? So have you ever had those times where you're just like you have these urges and you're like, where is this coming from? This overwhelming sensation of like anger, aggression, passion, lust, depression, anxiety, all these different things, and you're like, where, why, what is happening? Well, that's the mind and the emotions speaking to you. Okay. And what I want to get you to is I want you to get to a point where you ever had those moments where you just have this internal sense. And you may not be able to describe it of this is where I'm being led to. I'm being guided here. That's your higher self, your soul speaking to you. And so that should tell you there are two of you. You have your thinking mind, and then you have your soul, your spirit, your higher self, whatever you want to call it. Same thing. Once you get to that point and you realize the mind is a computer, and it's also, like I said, animalistic in nature, you can now start coaching yourself, training yourself, teaching yourself, getting your mind to listen to you versus you listening to your mind. Okay. So I'll leave it like this. If you can ask yourself, why am I thinking what I'm thinking? You then have to ask yourself, who is asking that question? And the times that you have thoughts come to your mind and you weren't thinking about it, where did that thought come from? Like what was the root of that thought that you had? And I've been talking to a few people about meditation and how valuable that is. And some of the people I've talked to, they have a really hard time meditating because all this noise just comes at them, and they're like, how do I stop this? I'm like, well, you don't fight it, number one. And just like working out, it has to be repetition. Okay. And the more you fight a negative thought or bad thought or the thought you don't want to have, the more it's going to come, because as Eckhart Tolle talks about, he's a spiritual teacher, what you resist persists. Basically, if you fight it, it's just going to increase. So the cool thing about it, this is where I come in, is once you notice a negative thought pass through your mind, your thoughts, that is such a great opportunity to now, like, oh wow, this is something that's inside of me that I need to go internal, look at, and face. And it takes a lot of courage for that. And so the moment you realize that, if you have all these negative thoughts, these bad thoughts all the time, or anxiety thoughts or depressive thoughts, whatever it is, the things that most of us are just trained to operate and act like, if you've been that way for the longest time, excuse me, you've been that way for the longest time, that should also tell you that you can train your mind yourself and think the way you want to think. But you have to be patient. You can't just change in one day. There's a mentor I had named Ty Lopez. He put out a book, not a book, he put out uh, a video series called The 67 Steps. And basically, he was saying that scientifically, it takes a human at least 66 days to form a new habit. So we did one extra day to add to it. So you're looking at least 2.5 months if you're just now starting this journey to get your mind to think a different way and act a different way and operate a different way. So I really want you to take the time each morning, multiple times throughout the day if you can, but at least in the morning and especially at nighttime, to sit there in quiet, sit there in silence, and close your eyes. And the reason closing your eyes is important, it doesn't matter where you sit, how you're sitting, as long as you're comfortable, doesn't matter. But I want you to close your eyes, because once you close your eyes, that shuts off a stimulus in the mind, right? And now you're left with breathing, your body, and the space around you. That allows you to slow down the frequency in which you're thinking of and feeling. And at that point, once you do that more and more and more, you can start to train your own mind to think, act, and operate a certain way. And then you can also take that new skill and apply that to when you're awake. And what I mean by that is when you're walking outside, you can start meditating outside with your eyes open, not eyes closed. But once you get to that point, then you can take the next step of, oh, let me start planting this seed and being intentional with this. Then I can bring certain things into my life, things that I desire, that I wish for, that I am, right? Because one of the biggest things a lot of us do once we get to that point is we're like, oh, I can meditate and I can, observe my thoughts and my emotions and I'm good. Like, well, okay, good. That's great. That's a great start. Then we get to this whole state of we'll call affirmations or manifestation. And a lot of us do it in a way that's it's counterproductive. We're spending so much time wanting and wanting and wanting and wanting. And if you think about it, if you're in a state of wanting, what are you going to have more things happen to you in your life? You're going to have more things that you want, right? So you're always going to have that certain frequency of wanting and wanting and wanting versus having. That's why one of my favorite things in scripture is I am. I am that I am. So if you say to yourself, I am X, Y, and Z versus I want X, Y, and Z, totally different message. Like I was saying earlier, the universe is, how do I say this? The universe, it's neutral. Okay. So if you ask for something, it's going to bring that to you in a certain way. And if you are asking and wanting, you're obviously going to keep having that same mode of wanting versus if you have that mode of having, it's already there. And it fast tracks that information sharing between you and the universe. Okay. So I hope that all makes sense. Everyone's journey is going to be very, very different. If they have questions or comments, please leave one. But my goal is to be able to help you discover you. Okay. Like we can talk about mindset all day. And yes, mental health is a big part of the current state of our human consciousness. But just like a tree, the root of all that is way more spiritually based, more consciousness based. And the root is now visibly on all the things that we're doing within our lives. It's manifested itself into a branch of some happiness, some sadness, but those are all symptoms, either good or bad, of our deeper root of where we're coming from, right? So we spend a lot of time just focusing on, well, let me deal with this because that's my problem. Well, that may be a manifestation of a deeper issue, good or bad, but the more you focus on dealing with it from uh, dealing it from a trying to find the right word here, from a symptom, it eliminates you from dealing with it from the root cause. And if you don't deal with the root cause, it's just going to repeat itself over and over again, right? So, all right, I'm gonna leave it here. I don't want to do an hour-long conversation like I did last time, especially in today's age. So I'll spend more time talking about different things. If there's anything you all want me to talk about or hear about, leave a comment. We'll go that route. I just want to leave you with this for today. You have so much power inside of you to think and feel. And the day you realize that you're not just mind and body, but you're also spirit, that's the day everything changes. Stop looking external. Everything is internal. Change internal, the outside changes. Right? All right. Love you.